Hi, class. This is Mrs. Oyster, and today I am going to read to you Chapter 1 from your Unit 11 reader about ecology. You also have this chapter in your ELA packet, so if you want to grab that and then read it along with me, you can. You are welcome to read it on your own, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to listen to it as well. So let's get started. Chapter 1 is called Living Things and Their Habitats. Now, on this page, before I start reading, I want you to listen for two things. What is ecology and what is an ecosystem? Okay, so have those tucked away in your mind as you listen. All right, here we go. Ecology is about nature and life. It is about the relationships between living things and their environment. Someone who studies ecology is an ecologist. An ecologist studies living things and the way they relate to their surroundings. This toad is part of an ecosystem. An ecosystem is like a habitat where an organism lives, but it includes many habitats, plus the non living systems that support them. In an ecosystem, each living thing depends on other living and non living things for survival. Insects find shelter and food on trees and in moss. The toad finds those insects and eats them. The toad depends on rainfall to supply a place to lay eggs. One day, maybe a snake will eat the toad. These are the kinds of things ecologists like to think about. The bee is attracted to the flower's bright color. The bee eats the flower's sweet nectar. The flower is also full of pollen. Pollen is a substance that looks like dust. When the bee buzzes off, it carries some of the flower's pollen away on its feet and wings. To make seeds, flowers must share their pollen with other flowers. Flowers do not have hands or feet or any other way to get their pollen to other flowers, so they depend on bees and other insects to spread it for them. The bee needs the flower in order to survive. The flower needs the bee and other insects in order to survive. These are perfect examples of the kind of relationships ecologists like to study. So, as you can see in the last two pages, you can see that these living things depend on each other. The bee needs the flower to get the pollen because bees need pollen. But the flower needs the bee to take that pollen and share it with other flowers so that the flowers can make seeds and in turn make other flowers. So they depend on each other. Here is another living thing you probably recognize, a squirrel. She is a little surprised to see you. This squirrel does not see people every day. She is not one of those squirrels you see skittering along branches in the park or your backyard. Instead, this squirrel lives deep in the forest. She has a nest of leaves and sticks somewhere way high up in this tree. In the springtime, the mother squirrel shared her nest with her babies, but now it is late summer. The babies have left the nest. The mother has the nest to herself. It is time for her to gather food for the winter. This squirrel's favorite food is acorns, which are nuts from oak trees. In the summer, it is easy for the squirrel to go out and find plenty of acorns, but the squirrel must also gather and save food for winter. In the winter, acorns won't be so easy to find. The squirrel uses her little paws to dig a hole in the ground. She buries an acorn. Over the summer and early fall, she may bury hundreds of them. Then, whenever she gets hungry during the winter, she can crawl out of her nest and go dig up an acorn. It is easy to see how the squirrel depends on the tree. She uses the tree for both food and shelter. However, the squirrel also gives something to the tree. How do you think the squirrel remembers where she buried all those acorns? Can she smell them? Does she put a little stick in the ground and mark each acorn? Does she draw a map on the back of a leaf? Actually, she does not remember where she planted all those acorns. She forgets a lot of them. Many of those acorns will remain in the ground right where she buried them. Acorns are nuts, and nuts are seeds with shells covering them. Like most seeds, acorns need to be planted in order to sprout and grow. Well, the squirrel did the oak tree a favor by planting all those acorns and then forgetting about them. If the acorns weren't buried, they probably would not sprout and might be eaten by another animal. The squirrel and the oak tree are each doing what they do to survive and produce young. The tree grows leaves and acorns. The squirrel uses the leaves for shelter and the acorns for food. This makes it possible for the squirrel to survive and produce young. Also, because the squirrel buries acorns, the oak tree is able to produce young too. This is how things work in an ecosystem. This is what ecology is all about.